I wasn't supposed to be home that day. The Dallas trip had been on the calendar for over a month, 3 days of back-to-back meetings, a client dinner, and a hotel I hated. But then, just like that, the project was scrapped. No big drama. Just a dry, 2-line email and a corporate shrug, timeline postponed. Thanks for your time. That was it. So I packed my bag, grabbed the next available flight, and figured I'd turn the sudden break into a surprise weekend at home with Jess. I imagined the look on her face when I walked through the door, something between confusion and that warm laugh she used to give me when I caught her off guard. It had been a while since I'd seen that laugh. I parked a few houses down. I don't know why. Maybe I was trying to be dramatic, some subconscious part of me wanting to make the surprise more cinematic. Or maybe, deep down, I didn't want to be seen. Whatever it was, I led the engine and walked up the driveway slowly, dragging my roller bag behind me. The house looked the same from the outside. White shutters, pale blue trim, one loose panel on the porch step Jess always told me to fix. I unlocked the door and stepped in, greeted by a hush that felt heavier than I remembered. It wasn't silent like peace, it was silent like hiding. I set my bag down in the foyer. That's when I noticed it. On the kitchen counter sat a white ceramic mug. Nothing unusual about that, we drink coffee like it's religion in our house. But this mug was different. A smudge of red lipstick marked the rim, like a print frozen mid-sip. Jess wears lipstick, sure, but not red. She's more the soft pink or muted mauve type. This shade was bold, bright, unapologetic. Definitely not hers. At first, I tried to explain it away. Maybe a friend stopped by. Maybe Jess had tried a new shade. I wanted to believe that. I really did. Then I saw the cigarette. It sat in the ashtray on the kitchen island, still faintly smoking, with a lipstick stain that matched the mug. Jess hates smoking. Her dad used to chain smoke when she was a kid, and she said the smell made her sick. She's always been firm about it, no smoking in the house, no exceptions. So whose cigarette was this? I stood there, just staring at it, the way you stare at something so ordinary it shouldn't feel threatening, yet somehow it does. I didn't touch it. I just took in the scene like it was a still from a movie I didn't remember filming. I walked quietly through the house, half expecting Jess to pop out and laugh, saying she forgot I was coming home today. But the place was empty. Not just physically, emotionally. The house felt sterile. Like someone had wiped it clean of us. In the guest bathroom, a navy blue towel hung on the rack. I stopped cold. We don't own navy towels. Ours are beige. Always have been. Jess insisted on matching sets after she watched some home organization show and wanted everything to feel intentional. She even labeled the linen closet shelves a bath, guest, cleaning. So where did this towel come from? It was slightly damp, draped unevenly like someone had used it and tossed it carelessly. Not how Jess folds things. She's neat. Obsessively neat. That's when the first real chill ran down my spine. I walked into the bedroom half afraid of what I might find. Everything looked untouched. Bed made. Pillows aligned. But the air told a different story. A faint scent of cologne lingered, woody, musky, unfamiliar. Not mine. I don't wear cologne often. Jess always said she liked the way I smelled naturally after a shower. She said it reminded her of the beach house where we spent our first summer together. That comment stuck with me. I kept it simple after that. No fragrances. Just soap. But the smell wasn't soap. It clung to the sheets like it belonged. Like it had been there a while. And for a brief moment I wondered how many times I had laid my head down on those pillows without knowing who had been there before me. I checked the bathroom trash. 2 tissues. 1 empty gum wrapper. And beneath that a receipt folded once, then tossed in. It was from a liquor store downtown. A bottle of red wine and a 6-pack of imported beer. Not unusual. But the date on it? Yesterday. I was in Dallas yesterday. Jess doesn't drink beer. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly aware of how stiff my body felt, like every muscle had been braced since I walked through the door. My brain was running through scenarios, benign explanations, innocent possibilities, but none of them stuck. They slipped away the moment I tried to hold onto them. That's when I heard the front door open. Jess's voice floated down the hallway, casual, bright. Hello? Ryan? I stood, walked to the top of the stairs. She looked up, surprised but not shocked. You're home early. I tried to read her face, but she gave me nothing. Just that same wide smile she wore when greeting coworkers or distant cousins. Project got canceled, I said. Thought I'd surprise you. She walked up the stairs slowly, grocery bag in one hand, phone in the other. Oh man, sorry about the trip. Want me to make you something to eat? I didn't answer right away. I studied her face, her posture, the tone in her voice. It was calm. Too calm. Like she'd had time to prepare for this. I asked, did someone come by today? She looked past me toward the kitchen. Yeah. Carla dropped in around noon. We had coffee. She had a cigarette, sorry about the smell. She wears red lipstick now? Jess blinked, smiled again. She's experimenting. Said she saw a TikTok about finding your bold shade. What about the towel in the bathroom? Oh yeah, she said. She showered here after spin class. Her water was shut off for repairs, remember? I didn't remember. But I nodded. Everything she said was perfectly logical. Nothing wild. Nothing I could challenge directly. But it felt off. Too smooth. Like a script she'd memorized. She kissed my cheek, told me to sit down and relax. She'd make dinner. Said she'd bought my favorite pasta. She was warm, affectionate, even humming as she moved around the kitchen. Nothing about her seemed off, except everything. I watched her stir the sauce, watched the way she avoided eye contact just a little too long, the way her smile flickered the moment she thought I wasn't looking. I should have asked more. Pressed harder. Called Carla. But I didn't. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and listened to the clink of silverware, the bubbling of the pot, the occasional laugh she threw over her shoulder as if we were living a normal evening. Maybe I wanted to believe her. Maybe part of me needed to. But sitting there, in the home I thought I knew, next to the woman I thought I understood, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't the only one in that house. After that day, nothing felt quite the same, even though everything looked the same. Just carried on like normal. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still left post-it notes on the fridge with grocery lists or reminders about trash day. Still said, love you, when she hung up the phone. But it was like watching someone play a part in a movie I used to be in. The lines were all there, but the performance had changed. And once I noticed the cracks, I couldn't stop seeing them. At first, it was little things. Small moments I'd brushed off now looped in my head like scenes I'd missed the first time around. Like how she never really touched me at night anymore. Not even in that quiet, unconscious way people do when they're half asleep. Her back was always to me. Arms tucked in. Pillow fortress around her like a wall I wasn't allowed past. Then there was her phone. It used to live on the kitchen charger at night. Now it was always with her. Shower, laundry, even during dinner. If it buzzed, she'd glance at it and flip it face down like it had offended her. I asked once, just casually, everything okay? She nodded. Yeah. Group chat stuff. Work gossip. She didn't ask about my day as much anymore. Just used to care about details. She'd remember little things I mentioned in passing, like when I said I liked that peanut sauce from the Thai place downtown and she ordered it without asking next time. But lately, she forgot things. Or maybe she stopped listening. Conversations felt hollow, like placeholders until the scene changed. She'd also started working late more often. It wasn't a huge shift at first. Just a few hours here and there. But then it became routine. Thursdays especially. Always Thursdays. I remember the first time it felt wrong. I came home to an empty house. There was a note on the counter, late meeting. Leftovers in the fridge. But there were no leftovers. No dirty dishes. No trace she'd been home at all. That night I sat on the couch, scrolling through Netflix without watching anything. Around 9:45 I heard the garage door. She walked in with a plastic bag of takeout, acting frazzled like she'd just escaped a hurricane. Sorry. I was starving and traffic was awful. I didn't have time to cook. I looked at the bag. Italian food. Not the Thai place. Not even one of our usual spots. Where'd you order from? She blinked. A little place near the office. You've never been. She didn't look me in the eye. Another thing, the music. We used to share playlists. Saturday mornings were for pancakes and 70s rock. Road trips meant indie folk. But one day I got in her car to move it out of the driveway and noticed something different. The stereo kicked on automatically, some moody R&B artist I'd never heard of singing about secrets and temptation. I hit info on the dash. The playlist was named Late Nights. I didn't mention it. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want to know what late nights meant. Maybe I was afraid of hearing a lie I couldn't pretend to believe. Her wardrobe changed too. Jess was always stylish, casual, comfortable, effortlessly put together. But lately, she'd started wearing clothes I'd never seen before. Low-cut tops, tighter jeans, a perfume that was more floral than the earthy scents she used to like. I told her she looked great once, trying to bridge the distance, and she smiled in that polite, empty way people do when they're hearing a compliment they don't care about. You think so? She asked, but she was already turning away. The worst part was realizing how long this might have been happening. Because when I looked back, really looked, I saw the pattern. Her touch had grown colder months ago. Her laughter was more filtered. Conversations shorter. In asterisk Macy less spontaneous and more strategic, like she was keeping score or going through the motions. And I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. One Saturday we went out for lunch, some new fusion place she picked. She kept checking her phone between bites. I asked if everything was okay. Just work stuff, she said. One of the clients is being needy. She didn't say which client. Didn't offer more? And when I asked if she wanted to take a walk afterward like we used to, she said she was tired. We drove home in silence. That night, while she showered, I stood in the bedroom staring at her nightstand. Her phone sat charging. The passcode screen lit up when I picked it up. I didn't try to guess the code. I just stared at it, wondering what kind of person I'd become. I hated the feeling, the distrust, the suspicion. It wasn't who I was. It wasn't who we were. But then again, maybe I didn't know who she was anymore. She used to leave little traces of herself around the house, her favorite pen in the laundry basket, a scribbled grocery list with hearts over the eyes, her scarf draped over a dining chair like she'd just stepped out for a second. Now everything felt curated. Controlled. Nothing out of place. Like she was erasing herself from this version of our life and preparing for a new one. I remember a night 2 weeks after I came back early. She climbed into bed and turned off the lamp without saying goodnight. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing even out as she drifted off. And then she said something barely above a whisper. "Are you happy?" I turned toward her. She was facing the wall. I couldn't see her face. "What?" She didn't repeat it. Just stayed still, quiet. I reached out, touched her shoulder gently. "Jess?" But she didn't respond. Whether she'd fallen asleep or didn't want to continue, I never found out. I lay awake that night, replaying that question. It didn't feel rhetorical. It felt like a warning. The next morning, everything was back to normal. She made coffee, folded the laundry, kissed me on the cheek before heading out to brunch with Sarah. I didn't ask where. I didn't ask if Sarah was even real. Because I wasn't ready for the answer. Instead, I went for a drive. I drove by her office. The lot was empty. It was Sunday. I kept driving. No destination. Just roads. Somewhere along the way, I realized I was mourning someone who hadn't left yet. And maybe that was the cruelest part, not knowing whether I was holding onto a person or a memory of her. That night, when Jess got home, she tossed her keys into the bowl by the door and greeted me with a casual, "Hey, babe." Then she flopped on the couch and turned on a cooking show we used to watch together. She didn't ask what I'd done that day. I sat next to her, not watching the screen. Just watching her. Noticing every blink, every shift in posture, every deflection. We were two strangers occupying the same space, pretending we weren't unraveling. The signs were all there. They'd always been there. But now they weren't harmless anymore. They were the echo of something broken, and I didn't know how to fix what I couldn't even name. The night it happened, I wasn't supposed to be there. That seems to be a theme, doesn't it? It was a Friday, and Jess had left in a hurry around 5:30. Said she was meeting some coworkers for drinks downtown, celebrating someone's promotion. She even showed me a group text thread, like she was proactively offering proof. I didn't ask for it. Just nodded and told her to have fun. She kissed me before leaving, light and distracted, like a task checked off a list. An hour later, I realized I'd forgotten my wallet at the pharmacy. I'd stopped by to pick up allergy meds on the way home, and in my rush, I'd left it on the counter. They were kind enough to hold it, and after grabbing it, I decided to swing by the house again. I figured I'd change out of my work clothes and maybe make something to eat. It was early. Jess wouldn't be back for hours. The house would be empty. That was the assumption. But when I pulled into our street, my headlights flashed across the rear of a black SUV parked 2 houses down from ours. At first, I didn't think much of it. Could have been anyone's. But something about it made me slow down. It was a newer model, clean, expensive looking, the kind you lease when you're trying to impress people. I'd never seen it on our street before. And it wasn't parked in front of a house. It was just idling under a streetlight. I drove past and parked in the driveway. As I approached the front door, I noticed it. The back door was ajar. Not wide open, just a crack. Like someone had forgotten to pull it shut all the way. Jess was obsessive about locking doors. Even when we were just working in the yard, she'd keep everything deadbolt. So to see that door open? Something twisted in my chest. I pushed it open slowly. The house was dim but not dark. A few lights were on, living room, hallway. I could smell something faint but unmistakable, wine. The sharp tang of alcohol mixed with that woody cologne I'd first smelled weeks ago in our bedroom. I stepped into the kitchen. 2 wine glasses sat on the table. One half full. One smudged with red lipstick. The room was silent, save for a faint noise above me. A thump. Then laughter. Soft. Muffled. coming from the bedroom. I stood there, frozen, staring at the glasses. There was something oddly polite about them, like they were waiting for me to take a seat and join the evening. Instead, I turned and walked toward the stairs. I didn't know what I was planning to do. I didn't have a plan. My body was moving on instinct, like it wanted to confirm something my mind was still refusing to accept. Halfway up, I heard it. The bed creaking. And then a voice, low, masculine, followed by Jess's laugh. Not the one she gave me. This one was softer, flirtier, playful. Something inside me shut off. I stood there, my hand on the banister, heart hammering so hard I could barely hear. I didn't need to see it. I didn't need to push the door open and witness the scene. I already knew. They were in our bed. The bed we'd picked out together. The one we'd laughed in, argued in, made peace in. The one we bought after our second anniversary because Jess said the old one reminded her of college dorms. Now it was theirs. I backed down the stairs quietly, numb. The kind of numb that feels like you're not even in your own skin anymore. As I walked back into the kitchen, I glanced at the wine glasses again. One had a fingerprint on the stem. The other had a small chip at the base. I stared at them for a long time. Then I left. I didn't slam the door. Didn't yell or break anything. I didn't even close the back door behind me. Just walked out down the driveway and past the SUV still idling under the streetlight. I looked at the license plate but didn't memorize it. Didn't need to. What would I do with it anyway? Call him? Threaten him? I wasn't even angry yet. I was just hollow. I drove around aimlessly for a while. No music. No destination. Just the sound of tires humming against the pavement and my brain trying to process what I just confirmed. There wasn't room for disbelief. It was all too clear. The lipstick on the mug. The cologne in our sheets. The vague excuses. The sudden interest in Thursday night work outings. It all lined up. The signs I'd dismissed, rationalized, twisted into harmless coincidences, they weren't harmless. They were pieces of a puzzle I'd been too scared to complete. And now it was finished. Every square inch filled with certainty. I ended up at an all-night diner on the edge of town. One of those places with faded vinyl booths and waitresses who've worked there since the Clinton administration. I sat in a booth by the window and ordered black coffee, not because I wanted it, but because I didn't know what else to do. The waitress must have sensed something. She kept checking on me but never asked questions. Just refilled the cup and nodded like she'd seen this kind of quiet before. I stared out the window watching the occasional car pass. Each one reminded me how fast life moves while yours is falling apart. At one point I checked my phone. A text from Jess. Just heading home. Miss you. Save me some of that dessert if you didn't eat it all, face-blowing kiss. It hit me harder than I expected. The casual tone. The emoji. The implied lie that she wasn't already in the house when I came by. She hadn't even noticed the back door open. She was covering her bases from a completely different reality, one where I was still at home, oblivious. And I had been. Until tonight. I didn't respond. Just locked the screen and set the phone face down on the table. I didn't go back home that night. Slept in the car outside my office instead, wrapped in an old hoodie I kept in the trunk for emergencies. It was cold. I didn't care. Sleep came in waves, light, dreamless, the kind you fall into when you're too tired to stay awake but too wired to rest. At some point before sunrise, I watched the sky turn from black to gray to soft orange, and with it came a quiet resolution. I knew what I'd do. I'd act normal. For now. I'd go home like nothing happened. I'd let Jess give her version of the night, offer me kisses and half-lies over reheated pasta. And I'd take it all in. I wasn't ready to explode. I wanted to see how long she'd keep up the performance. How far she'd go before she realized the audience had changed. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the house was still and dark. Her car in the garage. No signs of life inside. I walked in through the front door. Quiet. Deliberate. Everything was exactly where I left it. Except now, I couldn't look at any of it the same way. I couldn't look at her the same way. Jess was asleep when I climbed into bed. Hair splayed across the pillow. One hand curled near her face like a child's. She looked peaceful. Beautiful, even. For a moment, I almost forgot. Almost. But the scent of cologne still lingered on the pillowcase. And the bed still creaked as I laid down, the same way it had when I stood frozen halfway up the stairs. She didn't stir. Didn't ask where I'd been. She just sighed softly in her sleep and turned away from me. The same way she always did. The next morning, Jess was already in the kitchen when I woke up. The smell of bacon filled the air, something she hadn't cooked in months. Her voice floated down the hall in a sing-song rhythm as she hummed to herself, an upbeat tune I didn't recognize. She used to hum when she was genuinely happy. Now it sounded like someone performing happiness. I moved slowly, deliberately, still in the fog of last night. The wine glasses. The laughter. The bed creaking. The scent of him still clinging to the sheets. But now all that was gone. Or rather, tucked away like stage props after a show. The house had returned to its pristine self. When I stepped into the kitchen, she beamed at me. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, flipping a pancake. "You were knocked out last night. I came in and you didn't even move." I blinked. "Yeah, long day." She nodded sympathetically. "I figured. You didn't touch your leftovers either. Want me to make you a plate now?" I stood there watching her, hair pulled into a messy bun, a dash of flour on her cheek like the image of a woman in a breakfast commercial. I realized I hadn't seen her like this in weeks. No phone in hand. No distraction. Just acting present. "Sure," I said. She smiled again, wide and warm, and it sent a chill down my spine. Everything she did that morning was exactly right. The perfect blend of attentive and effortless. She asked me how I slept, mentioned a funny article she read, laughed at her own clumsy attempt to flip the pancake. There wasn't a crack in her performance. Except I'd already seen behind the curtain. As we sat down to eat, she pulled out her phone, not to text, but to show me pictures of some lakefront property a friend had just bought. "Can you believe how cheap it was?" she asked, sliding the screen toward me. "We should think about doing something like that." I nodded. "Maybe. You've always wanted a place by the water," she added, scooping syrup onto her plate. It was true. I used to talk about building a small cabin by the lake. A retirement dream. A place to unwind. We even looked at land 3 summers ago but never pulled the trigger. Now she was resurrecting that dream like it was still ours. It wasn't. I watched her eat, eyes lighting up over vacation homes and Zillow listings, and wondered if she had any clue I knew. If she could feel the way I was studying her now, not as a husband but as a stranger. A man trying to decode someone he once trusted implicitly. Later, she asked if I wanted to go for a walk. That threw me. "Just around the block," she said. "It's beautiful out." We used to do that a lot. Weekend walks with coffee in hand, casual chats about nothing. But it had been months since we'd done anything that felt companionable. I agreed, curious how far this charade would stretch. We walked side by side under a clear blue sky. Jess chatted about work, about the latest drama with her friend Sarah, about how she wanted to redo the living room with lighter tones. I nodded and contributed just enough to keep her going. She reached for my hand at one point and held it loosely, fingertips barely touching mine. The neighborhood buzzed with life. Dogs barking, lawnmowers humming, a kid on a scooter zipping past. To anyone watching, we looked like a couple enjoying a Saturday morning together. But my thoughts were trapped in the scene from the night before. Her laughter. The man's voice. The sound of the bed we shared, becoming theirs. I should have been boiling over. But the anger wasn't there. What I felt was colder. A quiet observation of how seamless the lie had become. How Jess slipped into it without effort, like it was a second skin she'd worn before. Back home, she made a fresh pot of coffee and settled on the couch with a throw blanket. She patted the cushion next to her. "Come on. Just for a bit. We never relax anymore." I sat beside her. She curled into me like nothing was broken. The rest of the day was a montage of calm, chores, meal planning, an episode of some true crime show she liked. She played her part perfectly, affectionate, attentive, smiling at all the right times. She even brought up the idea of taking a weekend trip in a few weeks. "Maybe the mountains," she said. "We need a reset." A reset. I stared at her for a long time after that. She didn't flinch. That night, she made pasta, my favorite. Poured 2 glasses of wine, lit a candle. The same kind of dinner we used to share in our first year of marriage, when we were too broke to eat out but too in love to care. "You've seemed off lately," she said gently, twirling her fork. "Work stress." I looked up. She held my gaze. "Maybe," I replied. "Just tired." She nodded slowly. "I get that." She said nothing else. Didn't press. Just continued eating. It occurred to me then that she was giving me space on purpose. Not because she sensed I was unraveling, but because she was covering hers. Later, as we washed dishes together, she bumped her shoulder into mine and smiled. "Hey," she whispered. "Still like me?" It was a joke, but her eyes searched mine too seriously. I smiled back. "Yeah. Still like you." And in that moment, I think I hated myself a little for how easily the lie left my lips. That night, we got into bed at the same time. Jess snuggled close. She hadn't done that in weeks. Her hand rested on my chest, her breathing even. She kissed my jaw and whispered, "Good night, babe." I lay there, eyes open. The room was still. Peaceful even. But every detail was calibrated. Every gesture part of a script written to keep the illusion intact. She didn't know I'd seen the wine glasses. Didn't know I'd heard their laughter. Didn't know that when I looked at her, I no longer saw my wife, I saw an actress who had perfected her role. She wasn't shaken because she didn't think I'd ever catch on. That was the brilliance of it, her confidence. Her mask wasn't desperation. It was certainty. She believed I'd never say a word. And maybe for now she was right. 2 weeks after I moved out, I went back to the lake house. I hadn't planned to. I was driving aimlessly after work, trying to burn through the weight of another day pretending everything was fine. The rental I was staying in, a plain one-bedroom on the edge of town, felt like a waiting room more than a home. It had no personality, no history. Which in some ways was the point. But the lake house, that was something else entirely. I had built that place. Every nail, every board, every corner had a piece of me in it. Jess and I started the project during the 2nd year of our marriage. We bought a plot of land on a whim, something we thought only rich people or retirees did. But we were in love and full of ambition. Every weekend, we drove up with toolboxes and ideas, laying floorboards in the dark, painting walls while blasting 90s rock, dreaming about future holidays and summers with kids we didn't have yet. We weren't rich, but that house was our version of wealth, a space built from intention and love. So that night, on a stretch of roads surrounded by trees and silence, I turned the wheel and headed toward it without meaning to. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted to stand on the porch, look at the lake, and remember what it felt like when life still made sense. But when I turned onto the gravel drive, my stomach dropped. The black SUV was already there, parked neatly at the edge of the wraparound porch like it belonged there. I sat in my car for a long moment, engine idling, heart slowly sinking. Then I saw them. 2 kids. A boy and a girl, maybe 6 or 7, raced across the front yard, shrieking with laughter. The boy was wearing a superhero cape. The girl carried a net, chasing butterflies. And there was Jess. On the porch, leaning against the railing in a sundress, drink in hand. Her hair was loose and she was laughing, really laughing, in that way I hadn't seen in years. She wasn't alone. The man beside her was tall, broad-shouldered, in a crisp button-down with the sleeves rolled up. The kind of guy who looked like he starred in his own commercials. He leaned close to Jess, pointing out toward the lake. She nodded eagerly, gesturing with her free hand, showing him the space like she was a real estate agent walking a potential buyer through a dream. They looked like a family. Not a fling. Not a secret. A replacement. IK** led the engine and sat there, watching from the tree line like some ghost haunting his own life. I wanted to believe it was a rental. That Jess had offered the house up to a friend or coworker. But I knew better. The way she moved through that space, the familiarity, the comfort, it wasn't casual. It was lived in. The kids weren't just visiting. Their toys were scattered across the lawn. Their towels hung from the porch rail, drying in the breeze. My lake house, our lake house, was no longer ours. It had been rebranded. Repurposed. There was a hammock in the corner now. A new one. I remembered talking about putting one there once, but we never got around to it. Now, Jess was pointing at that exact spot, nodding as the man gestured toward it with what looked like a measuring tape. They were building our plans. Without me. I don't know how long I sat there. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been 50. Time stopped matching the moment I saw those kids. Because that's when it hit me, the timeline. This wasn't new. It had been going on far longer than I realized. The man hadn't just appeared after I left. He had been there before. Long before the wine glasses. Long before the cologne and the Thursday night meetings. Jess hadn't replaced me after I moved out. She had been phasing me out long before I ever noticed. She'd just been waiting for the right time to make it official. A few minutes later, the man stepped off the porch and walked toward the kids. They screamed joyfully as he scooped the boy up and twirled him in the air. Jess watched with soft eyes, her hand resting on the railing. Her face. God. Her face. It wasn't guilt. It was peace. She had everything she wanted. And what was I now? A draft that got discarded? A foundation for someone else's perfect version? I started the car and backed out quietly, gravel crunching beneath the tires. I didn't go back to the rental. I drove until I ran out of road and ended up parked at an overlook near the highway, watching trucks zoom by under the setting sun. For the first time since I'd left home, I cried. Not angry, not loud, just silent tears that slipped down my cheeks without warning. Because the dream wasn't just dead. It had been hijacked. The lake house was supposed to be our future. Our kids. Our memories. Our late-night talks on the deck, watching stars appear one by one. But that future had been overwritten. Rewritten. By someone else's pen. And I was just a footnote now. Eventually, I drove back to the rental. The silence inside felt heavier than usual. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at the walls, unsure what to do with my hands. There was nothing there that belonged to her, and yet everything felt tainted. I thought about deleting her number. Thought about burning old photos. But I didn't do any of that. Instead, I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the wall for hours. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I logged into our shared lake house email, an account we'd set up years ago to keep track of permits and maintenance. There were messages there. Emails with his name on them. Renovation quotes. Contractor discussions. Talk of building a dock for the kids to fish from. Jess had CC'd him on everything. Not just recently, but for months. Even while she was crawling into bed beside me. Even while she was smiling across the dinner table and asking about my day. He was already being looped into plans that used to be ours. That night, I packed a box of what little I cared about, my dad's old flannel, some notebooks, a photo of me and my brother as kids. I left the rest. Clothes, books, dishes, all replaceable. I didn't want to carry any of this weight into the next chapter. I sent an email to our lawyer, officially relinquishing my half of the lake house. I didn't want it. Let them have it. Let them decorate it with new towels and beach chairs and family portraits. Let them build their dream. I'd find a new one. The next few days blurred together. I kept to myself, avoided texts from friends who meant well but didn't understand. I ignored Jess's one-word check-in, hey. I didn't respond. What was there left to say? She had rewritten our life and made me a ghost in my own memories. And I'd finally accepted that there was no home to go back to. Only the ache of remembering how much I loved building it. 3 days after the lake house, there was a knock at my apartment door. Mid-morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. I was still in sweatpants, trying to convince myself I had the energy to job hunt. When I opened it, a man I'd never seen before stood there, mid-30s, plain blue button-down, hair slightly disheveled like he'd driven here without stopping. You Ryan? He asked. Yeah. I'm Dan, he said, holding out a manila envelope like it was something fragile. I used to be engaged to Jess. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and let him in. We sat at my small kitchen table. He laid out the envelope and opened it like it was evidence in a case, documents, printed emails, a few old photographs. I recognized Jess's handwriting immediately. A set of wedding vows, nearly identical to the ones she wrote for me. But where she had written Ryan in ours, this one had Dan crossed out in pen. My name was written beside it in the margin. Same phrasing. Same exact sentences. She did the same thing to me, Dan said quietly. Different town, different guy. She moved in with me after 6 months. Said she wanted to build a future together. Then one day, she was just gone. Took a bunch of my money under the idea of starting a shared business. I didn't even care about the money. It was how clean the exit was. Like I'd never mattered. There were emails, too, Jess writing to someone about starting over again. The details were eerily familiar. Her phrasing. Her love bombs, as Dan called them. A calculated routine. A pattern. Someone I knew saw her tagged in a photo a year later. She was with you, Dan said. That's when I realized she didn't just move on, she recycled everything. Same words. Same script. New face. I stared at the papers. I didn't feel shocked. I felt hollow. Because it explained too much. I hadn't been chosen. I had been inserted. You weren't crazy, he said. She's good at making people feel like they are. I figured you deserved to know. He left me with the envelope and no expectations. Just the facts. Later that night, I sat with her vows in my lap, the ones she'd written for our wedding. Her voice played in my memory as I read them. I promised to choose you again and again, she had said aloud, eyes full of tears. But they weren't my words. They weren't even hers. They were someone else's words cut and pasted into my life. I wasn't her first. I was her next. And I wasn't going to be her last. After Dan, there was no more doubt. No more hope. No more spinning scenarios where this could somehow be saved or explained or fixed. I called the lawyer. We closed every joint account. I forwarded the lake house paperwork, signed my name, and walked away without a cent. Jess didn't fight it. She didn't even ask why. It took a full week before I heard from her. A text that said, hey, did you take the coffee maker? I stared at the message for a long time. No, I'm sorry. No, can we talk? Just a question about a machine. I didn't respond. Now I live in a small house near the coast. Nothing fancy. The kind of place that smells like salt and silence. I walk to the shore in the mornings, drink coffee alone, and talk to strangers who don't know my story. I don't tell them. Not yet. Sometimes I'll sit on a bench and wonder what Jess is doing. But I don't wonder why anymore. The performance is over. The mask is off. And all that's left is a man who believed in a version of love that was never real to begin with. I'm not healed, not even close, but I'm not pretending anymore. And there's peace in that. No curtain call, no apology, just the quiet kind of